The Morgan Report with David Morgan.
David Morgan of themorganreport.com. It is Friday, the 14th of January, 2022. I just want to remind everybody that follows my work that you really want to be on the free email list, especially if we get been shadow banned for years. But if they take us down completely, we are on Odyssey and a couple other platforms. But the best way is get on the email list here with your first name and your email. When you hit the join, it will ask you, do I really want this? You'll have to say yes with the click of the mouse. And once that's accomplished, you will be on our free list. As you know, I do quite a bit of information for the public, and it's almost all on the blog, the YouTube channel. I tweet most of it. The blog is probably the second best place to come. If you're interested in YouTube, it's over here. Twitter's over here. Just started a new series. We'll probably go 3 or 4 deep. The Dark Side of Uranium 1. I suggest you watch that as well as Crypto Conspiracy number 14. It's one of my favorites with Kurt Wuckert that went through and told us a lot about the origin of Bitcoin. I will have a new one coming up that goes further down the rabbit hole. It will be number 15. It should be up in the next few days. And then based on the number 15, that interview put me on to somebody else that he got most of his information. I've reached out to that gentleman and looks like he's willing to do another interview. So we're not done digging on the Crypto Conspiracy podcast. It will continue until it exhausts itself. But if you're turning in late, you really want to go through all 14. You don't have to. I would certainly recommend that you do so that you get the full breadth and depth of what this whole system is about. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about the metals. There's really not a lot to talk about, although with inflation published 7% now, it looks like the metals have started to firm. Almost everyone's expecting a new low in the metals, and that may happen. Right now, they're actually showing some strength. The shares are doing okay at this low level. And can they go lower? The answer is yes. And there's been a lot of talk about what can the Fed do, and the Fed says it's going to raise interest rates. And almost all of us, yours truly included, think that once they start to raise interest rates, it will go for so long, and then they'll throw in the towel, and they will back off, and that will be the bottom in gold, and it'll probably take off. However, I want to go on record as saying, if in fact the Fed, which remember, it's the Federal Reserve, but it's owned primarily by people that are not the U.S., are not U.S. citizens. They're not Americans. These are foreigners that own the Federal Reserve. Yes, there are member banks and all that, I know. But the bulk of the power lies with people that not necessarily have the United States' best interest at heart. They have the best interest of the U.S. dollar at heart until it doesn't serve them any longer. Having said that, I want to make this point. It is possible, not probable, that the Fed could continue to increase interest rates until it absolutely destroys the economy. And that would happen. If interest rates were pegged at a high level, just pick an absurd example like Volcker in 1980, 18%. I don't think that could happen. Could, very, very, very doubtful. But let's say 5, let's say 6, 7, something that's actually used to be in the normal range in a free market where the market determined interest rates. If the Fed hiked interest rates that high, I'm not saying that they will. What I'm pointing out is if they did something beyond what most of us expect and really raised interest rates and kept them there, they have a guaranteed financial collapse, basically. That's what I want to get on the record. Will that occur? I doubt it. Could it occur? There is a possibility. How much, how probable, I don't know. Probably very low. But we certainly know from what's going on all around us with Stupid 19 and everything else that those in control or appear to be in control certainly will stop at nothing. All right, so I want to move on to my Twitter account. I put up some interesting stuff today already. The one I'm going to go to right now is this one here. And it's an article that I'm going to read a lot of. I usually don't do that. Usually I read a paragraph or two, but this one's very important. And let me get started. The Hurlin Report, complete overhaul of the U.S. financial system. Now, this is a story that pretty much parallels what I've written in the premium service, the private letter for the members, quite some time ago. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's a lot to go through here. But it talks about the end result of the power grab will be a fully mechanized society where citizens' bodies and minds are invaded by tech, managed by AI, and ultimately serve the financial and emotional interest of the self-appointed mad priests. And yes, they are mad. I like the start of this. To our chagrin, the Great Resetters want to control our existence completely. They want to control our diets, our thoughts, our sexuality. They want to control our feelings and our relationships. And sure as hell, they want to control our money. The financial component of the Great Reset is at the foundation of how they hope to get from where they are to their mechanical dystopian. This is written by Dr. Joseph Mercola, and I think a lot of you have heard of his name. Just an aside here in this article, of course, this is a quote from David Rockefeller from years and years ago. Some believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that is the charge, I stand guilty, and I'm proud of it, David Rockefeller. So that goes back to what I said about the Federal Reserve. Rockefeller, obviously, one of the prime people in the banking elite. So if they want to, they could put interest rates up until it absolutely devastates the United States economy. Again, I'm not saying that's going to happen. At this point, I think it's unlikely. But I want to go on the record and make sure you understand what's at stake here, because it's getting more and more tenuous by the day. I know there's been a lot of pushback on Stupid 19, and I'm not saying it's not an illness. In fact, my webmaster had it very bad, and that means I'm totally at the controls here, which is fine. I'm just not used to doing the whole thing without help. Regardless, the financial aspect of the Great Reset, and this is what I want to concentrate on, a complete overhaul of the U.S. financial system. This topic of finance in the light of this attempt at reform has been explored by a number of great researchers and investigative journalists, blah, 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 blah. I've done it as well. Talks about Catherine Austin Fitts. Not familiar with her. Google her. She's always worth listening to. It's worth your time. A complete overhaul again. An eloquent, charismatic, and knowledgeable corrupt system, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Something you can look him up if you're not familiar with it. Here's what I want to get to. Money's programmable, and our spending is not free-form, i.e., certain chunks of our money can be assigned for specific purposes, and we can only spend it in certain places, or we may be allowed to only buy certain types of food, etc. Censorship is easy, and basically controlling people's behavior. This is part of the Great Carbon Reset. I've talked about that as well. This is where you get so many carbon credits with your central bank digital currency. And once you run out of those carbon resets for the month, that's it. Or your carbon credits, I should say. That's it. You'll be given a maximum allowance of carbon credits on your carbon credit crypto wallet. Each time you perform an action that has a carbon trace, carbon credits will be deducted from your wallet on the blockchain. And what you can buy and do is decided by the blockchain smart contracts. And I want to finish with this, talking a little bit about silver. This came out in Coin Week over 10 years ago. This is when UBS was caught charging storage fees on phantom silver. And it actually addresses two banks here. It talks about UBS charging storage fees on phantom silver. And then as you read down, it talks about a very similar case against Morgan Stanley. And in that case, small investors were also claiming they've been defrauded. And here's what's so interesting to me, is this is Morgan Stanley, not UBS, who also did something similar. The bank defended itself by alleging, among other defenses, that it was simply following standard industry practices. In other words, the amount of information given to customers, the unallocated nature of the scheme, as well as the charging of storage fees for imaginary metal, were standard industry practices. Isn't that interesting? In light of what we now know, maybe they were telling the truth. Morgan Stanley did eventually settle for a multi-million-dollar payout, but it continued to deny liability. So there you have it, folks. Think about it. It's the same old story. It's the same old crime. The original goldsmiths realized after a short time that people deposited their gold and used these certificates rather than the gold itself. And the ratio is about 10 to 1, meaning they could print up a lot more certificates that were not backed by gold. And this has gone on from the original goldsmiths through the Western banking system. And of course, it is apparent today. There's no doubt in my mind. We wrote a whole chapter about fractional reserve bullion banking in the Silver Manifesto. And if you're interested, you can go to our website and buy the book. I still have 500 left. I had 1,000 printed again, and very willing to ship them out. We can't ship to the UK or Canada anymore. It's just too much of a hassle with customs. They come back. In fact, what we're charging actually lost a little bit of money on the shipping fees, but that's okay. If people want it that bad, it's when they do it. But I won't do it anymore because they never get to the purchaser, unfortunately. So I'm going to leave it there. This is the second update or weekly perspective from David Morgan of themorganreport.com.